the Passion Chorale written to honor the crucified Lord. O sacred head now wounded. You know, there's not much to the story today. Jesus said, we're going to Jerusalem. His friends said, don't. He said, gotta. They said, whatever. And so they go down the hill, across the river, through the gate, and into the city. Friends walking, Jesus riding, children smiling, crowds cheering, authorities fretting. This is not new stuff here, but it is captivating stuff. It is the story of Jesus, the country boy, riding into the big city as if to say, here I am, make of me what you will, do to me as you will. There's no point in keeping my ministry secret in the Galilee anymore. Well, it all looks so promising. Right man, right message, right place, right time. Things could have really taken off from there, except that they didn't, given that by Friday he was dead. And doesn't that suck the wind out of your Palm Sunday sails? We're talking just 5 days here. There wasn't even enough time for Jesus to make the cover of Time. Everything that was packaged with so much promise wasn't delivered, or so it seems. Drop back with me for a few moments to the preceding days when Jesus was in Jericho. Now, the last time that I was sick enough to require an antibiotic, the doctor said to me, now, take everything in this bottle. Don't finish them all, because you're going to feel better about halfway through, and don't put them down. Take every one of them. It's the only way to prevent a relapse. Well, I obeyed, but I must admit I was offended. Relapse, the very word is offensive. But I, of all people, should know better. Relapse is the stock and trade of my work. You know, people relapse all the time. They relapse into doubt, into poor choices, into depression, into dysfunction, the dysfunctional ways that we think or do as we play out the scripts that were written for us 2 or 3 generations ago. Which brings me to temptation. For temptation is another thing into which we often relapse. At the beginning of Lent, we spoke about the temptations of Jesus as he went into the Judean wilderness near the city of Jericho. Jesus, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And still wet from his baptism, he faced these choices. Turn these stones into bread. You're hungry, you can feed yourself and everyone else. Defy gravity. Jump off the pinnacle of this building so that you can prove that God will not let you be bruised or broken. Swear your allegiance to me, and in so doing control the destiny of all the nations. And who made these offers? Well, the devil made these offers. The devil without, or the devil within? That's it. Reverend Ryan spoke, and Patrick sang, and Stephanie and Avery and Jordan painted so eloquently last Sunday about the power of inner demons. Well, at any rate, after 40 days, Jesus left the wilderness, and the tempter left Jesus. But did the tempter leave Jesus for good? Personally, I think not. In the letter to the Hebrews, the writer elevates Jesus as our great high priest, but in the next breath challenges anyone who would claim that Jesus was not an ordinary man. No, in all ways he was tempted as we are tempted, And when the writer says, in all ways, I think that's what he means. Jesus faced temptations on as many different fronts as we do. So with that in mind, let me suggest that Palm Sunday follows what I might call the fourth great temptation of Jesus. In the company of his disciples, Jesus is once again spending several days in Jericho. Jericho, a delightful city, one of the oldest cities in the world, about 11,000 years old. It is a spring-fed oasis located on the west bank of the Jordan, just above the spot where the Jordan River empties into the Dead Sea. The climate is warm and dry, supporting lots of citrus fruit, some of the largest oranges I've ever seen in my life. Today, it is a lovely town where Arabs dwell. But Jericho is also the scene of a rather famous fork in the road. As Jesus and his disciples are walking out of the city of Jerusalem, they approach the fork. The road goes north to the Galilee. The other way goes south and west to Jerusalem. Now, I don't know how to identify temptation always, but I know that a fork in the road is as good as any place to find it. Consider Jesus' alternatives. Shall I go north to the Galilee? There are good reasons to go there. I love it. That's my home. I've done good work there, and I would be safe there. My father is dead, and the family business might be suffering. You know, the people depend on me in the Galilee. Well, God depends on me in the Galilee. I've done good work for God there. If I go home, I can live in a place where I'm known, and people from all over that region can come to me, and I can offer what comfort I can. If I go north, I'm pretty well assured that I'll live a full life and die an old man in my bed. Oh, and I could really use the additional time. I mean, just seems to be this strange power that emanates from me, and the potential of which I'm only now just beginning to understand. But whatever that power may be, there are people who seem to want it. So isn't that a good enough reason for me to go back home to Galilee? What would be wrong with that after all? Or I could go south to Jerusalem, to almost certain glory. My people need a leader. They cry for one. Some just cry. Perhaps this thing is bigger than me. Perhaps this is the voice of history drafting me. If drafted, will I serve? If elected, will I stand up? Vox populi, vox Dei, the voice of the people, the voice of God. How do I tell them apart? Could they be one? They have been before. Well, who's going to step forward if not me? My nation does not lack for people who are primed to go after the Romans. I understand how they feel because that surge of nationalism runs through my veins as well, but others don't possess the kind of patience and discernment that I have. I mean, I know even in my closest circle of friends, aren't there two who are known as the sons of thunder? And there's one, Judas, who is known to be a part of that insurgents group, the Dagger Society. And if in the process, you know, a little glory might come my way, is that all that bad? I mean, what can be wrong with glory if it comes by accident and not by my own quest? To which the devil said, right on, boy. Don't you worry about it. You just give them what they want. Dazzle them, feed them, lead them, be the Messiah that they want. And if things get a little bloody to begin with, well, you can work things out around your own thinking a little later after the victory's won. Whereupon Jesus may have said to the devil something like this, you know, that makes sense. I could really get into that. And part of me would like to. But something about it just doesn't seem to fit. To which the devil said, that's too bad. I could have made you a star. You would have been great. They would have loved you in Jerusalem, and now all bets are off. It wouldn't surprise me if they turned on you. And with that conversation, whether it occurred or not, contains just the hints of a third alternative. You know, I could go south to Jerusalem, all the while being who I am and refusing to be who I am not. I can go to Jerusalem, letting the chips fall where they may, even though at the end of the day, I may find myself among the chips. And those are the choices. I can go north to the Galilee and die in my bed. I can go south to Jerusalem and die in a palace. I can go south to Jerusalem and die on a hill. You know, it's so simple to see things in a rearview mirror and so difficult to see things when they're right in front of you. And it is especially hard to see them when you're standing at a fork in the road, because a fork in the road is always a place where decisions are the most agonizing. A fork in the road is where all that stuff happens. You're forced to do the proing and the conning, or on the one handing and on the other handing, which is all that stuff of life. And in the fork of the road, it's always where the tempter is, because we're always forced to make choices between what is bad and what is good, and what is good and what is better, and what is better and what is best. And there are always people standing around you who will help you rationalize whatever choice you make. I watched this happen to a young woman. Just last summer, we were standing on that little grassy knoll at the Arrowhead Golf Clubhouse. The sun was slanting, the chairs were filling, the music was playing, the soprano was singing, the camera was waiting, a couple hundred hearts were beating, one young man's blood pressure was rising, and two mothers were nervously twisting their handkerchiefs. And suddenly the song ended and the soprano set, the music swelled, the adrenaline surged, the bridesmaids walked, the people rose, and at the last minute, I heard that father say to his daughter, "Honey, you know you don't have to go through with this." You don't have to go through with this. Someone should have said that to Jesus at the fork in the road. But people did say that to Jesus in the fork in the road. "Don't go," they said, "veer north." And you wouldn't have to ask me twice. At least that part of me that buys into what I call the compelling myth of the Colorado high country. Boy, you can just tell by the way we talk about it. Oh, by the time I get to Evergreen. Oh, by the time I get to Georgetown. Oh, when I make that crest at the tunnel there, I just feel all the stress draining out of my body. Even as life just oozes back in, poor by grateful poor. You know, we were sitting on the deck of my friend's mountain cabin late in the afternoon watching the sun play across Twin Lakes and up on Mount Elbert. And I was enjoying it so much that I heard myself say to her, "There's just one thing I don't understand. Why on earth do you ever leave this place?" But in a night of very fitful sleep, I answered that question as I fought with my own inner demons of yearning and denial. You know, I would have to leave that place because it's too early in my life to withdraw from so much of my life. I would have to leave that place because there are needs that can't be filled there, drives that can't be fulfilled there, truths that can't be expressed there, and callings that can't be answered there. I would have to leave because there is this restlessness that ferments in me. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I call that restlessness God. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I call that restlessness nervous energy. But on most days, including Sundays, I call that restlessness passion. Passion. I would have to leave to fulfill my passion. I would have to leave because the idea of never leaving sounds like a denial of everything that I am about. I suppose that whatever else Palm Sunday is, it is about Jesus being the best possible Jesus that he can be, which for him meant turning south on Highway 90 and then going west to Jerusalem into the big city. You don't have to understand it, but you do have to admire it. And were you to tag along with it, it would be nice for his sake, but for yours as well. I watched this unfold one afternoon. An elderly resident in a faded flannel shirt was shuffling up and down the corridor. He had probably outlived his time and his own body. But then a name was called and he stopped and turned toward the sound, which it turned out was a nurse's aide who was distributing ice chips and pitchers of water. The old man waited, leaning against a wall. And when the aide got to him, this little conversation ensued. And focus on the old man's face as first disbelief, and then joy, and then determination register there. He is being drafted to help distribute pitchers of ice. Need has saved him. Mercy, in the form of a pink starched uniform, has just earned an honorary degree in psychology. The old man still shuffles, his hand still trembles, and the efficiency ratings on ice distribution drop dramatically for the rest of the afternoon. But in his eyes, you can tell, can't you, that he has been touched by grace. By grace. The hospital aide, you can tell, fears for his stamina. And she says, "We've got to go all the way to the end of the hall." To which the old man replies, "Honey, I'd go to the end of the world with you." Which is why at every fork in the road, I keep falling in step with Jesus. Still not certain of my motives, still unclear about the destination. But I have learned that I can trust his leading. And I find that the one thing I cannot do without is the pleasure of his company. Amen.